We live in a day and age where we question everything, yet we all take in that information like sponges. The world's attention is now focused on the ongoing wars and the pandemic. Well, the media is at least. Other news, be it positive or negative, is ignored and thrown to the wayside. At least you can find an article or two about those specific topics or events. For this, on the other hand, you can't. It's been wiped from the face of the internet, if it was ever there in the first place. And only a few people, those who have seen the writings themselves, or those who have known the person who saw them firsthand, know of adventures of that lone man. You probably heard of Sentinel Island. It's quite well known for a few reasons. If you don't know what or where Sentinel Island is, let me briefly explain. Sentinel Island is a small island in the Indian Ocean, under the jurisdiction of the Indian government. The island is fairly small and isolated, though it is not uninhabited. On the contrary, it has a native population. We don't know much about them, save for the fact that they've been living there for a very long time, and that they are not fond of visitors. Many have tried to visit the island. Some unlucky fishermen got stranded there. They were allegedly cannibalized by the natives. There was a story of a missionary that went there, only to die because of a hail of arrows. Helicopters passed by the island, but despite the alien sight the natives saw, they bravely fought back by, you guessed it, shooting arrows. There have been more friendly encounters, but I honestly can go on for hours about the various incidents. To make a long story short, there is an inclusion zone around the island. People aren't allowed to visit it. All in all, we've learned our lesson. Those people wanted to be left alone. Most people would agree not to interfere with their lives. Heck, one sneeze and you could kill off the entire population. They aren't immune to various diseases like we are. Well, so I thought at least. Until I met one Pierre Clark, a half-French, half-English fellow whom I met when I was visiting family in Wales. A chance meeting it was. He was my cousin's friend. But alas, we clicked. Though he had his own weird idiosyncrasies, he was a good guy overall. He seemed well-groomed and polite. Overly so at sometimes, but I'll sum that up to the English upbringing. In the following 2 weeks that I stayed there, I found out that we had quite a lot in common. Most of all, a fascination in linguistics and history. I was planning on studying linguistics in university at the time, and since he was nearly 10 years my senior and had these same interests, and was incredibly knowledgeable in the said interests, I asked him where he had received that education. Books, he said, grinning from ear to ear. Books and independent research. You won't believe what you can find once you are buddy-buddy with the local librarian. Now don't get me started on London, my goodness. Those are veritable gold mines compared to these wee little libraries dotted around local towns. But don't avoid them, no. It is rare to find a good source of information in the local small libraries, but once you do, jackpot. He loved libraries and books. Basically, every conversation we had was centered around what he read in some paper, or some book by a not widely known author. Some of the stories were akin to these searches for El Dorado, or the mythical high tales of Atlantis, while some others seemed to be more grounded in reality. Most were somewhere in the middle, crazy enough to be scoffed at as fake, but with enough realistic elements to make you think, what if? My good friend Pierre wasn't keen on staying in the cushy yet cloudy land on the British Isles. He had his sights set far away. I heard of Sentinel Island from him first and had to search it for myself. Bear in mind, this was the time when the internet was in its infancy, so it wasn't easy. But I did eventually find it. He was planning on leaving a week after I left for home, back in the States. To be honest, I asked him whether or not I could join him. Listen up, lad. I know you're curious as much as I am. But look, you haven't invested your life into this, right? I could hear his words from back then as if he were speaking right now. Oh, well, of course. I always dreamed to be a part of something new, to take a risk, a gamble. Visiting an island is not a far-fetched idea, especially if it serves the purpose of finding out more of our history, I replied. I cringed at the naivety I possessed back in the day. I was the classic youngster ready to throw my entire future under the bus for some adventure. Man, come on. Eventually, I decided against it, thankfully. Traveling to there was expensive for one person, even more so for two, and I was incapable of paying for that. And I highly doubt my parents, despite me being an adult at the time, letting me go on an adventure with some acquaintance that I knew for 2 weeks. Once I went back home, I thought about the things that I missed by not going. But eventually, all that faded to the back of my mind and life went on. I haven't forgotten about Pierre. He was an interesting character after all. But I never imagined us crossing paths once again. Yet as fate would have it, nearly 15 years since our last encounter, we met once again. This time, he was the guest, having arrived to America. To say we've changed was an understatement. He had started to gray and had 2 kids and a relatively stable job and income. He somehow had managed to find me. He said since he was in America, I crossed his mind, so why not visit me? Luckily, he didn't have to look far. He remembered my name and managed to find me on the internet. We had a brief phone call before I invited him over. We greeted each other like old friends would, despite knowing each other so briefly. He seemed to be his old, very polite self, but this time he brought a very different aura, a vibe if you will. We had our pleasantries for the first half hour. He was mostly curious how far I've come. Once I told him my story, how I met my now ex-wife, how the kids came along and all that jazz, I asked him about what's new with him. Oh man, where do I begin? Remember that time I told you about that Sentinel Island? He said. Yeah, don't tell me you were serious about that. Well, I was, dead serious in fact. I didn't want to tell you the details, you were still too young. Too inexperienced to understand. No offense. I looked at him with a puzzled face. None taken, say. You really went there, haven't you? How was it? As you can see, I am alive. So you managed to dodge the arrows, I said in a chuckle. No, there were no arrows. I spent much longer there than you think. 6 months, I believe. I smiled, waiting for the punchline that didn't come. He had a serious expression. My smile vanished. You... How come I haven't heard about this? Your name should have been all over the news. How did you survive? I asked him about a million questions. And yet, in the moment, I hadn't thought of him providing any evidence to back his claim. I didn't have to, he provided it himself. I'll answer as much as I can. But can you promise me to keep this between you and me? I don't want someone else to steal my research. I want to share this with someone, and you're the only person that I think I can trust. I nodded. Yes, of course. He retrieved a couple of photos from his interior pocket. Looking them over, I still had one question. How do I know they aren't doctored or edited? I asked. I'll let you keep them for a day if you want to check, he said, then continued. As you can see, I snapped a selfie right here on the boat. You can check on the internet if the island and the terrain match. After checking the photos and confirming that they indeed did match the original Sentinel Island, I was pretty sure at this point that he wasn't lying. He had a total of 4 photos with him, though he said that he had more. He brought these 4 with him. The first one was on the boat, as I've mentioned, a selfie. The second one was on the beach, looking at the ship that was leaving. The third was really hard to tell, it was dark out. but there seemed to be a fire burning with people around it. And the fourth and final photo was that of a stone slab with writing on it. I managed to befriend the natives by bearing gifts of cloth and coconut. They had their bows trained on me, but they didn't see me as much of a threat, surprisingly enough. I didn't have many photos of them because I didn't want to provoke them or scare them because of the camera. After a few days of getting comfortable with them and acclimating to a new way of life, I had a slow process of integrating into the tribe. I'll go into further detail at a later date. The thing I want to tell you about is the language which they speak. He looked over the photos before laying them back down on the table. My main question is, they have a writing system? I asked, referring to the slab. No, they don't have the concept of writing. Well, now they sort of do that I introduced it to them. But no, they don't have a writing system. The slab was there for as long as they remembered, going back for generations. So, some other civilization I placed it there. I can't recognize it as any known script, I said, looking at the grainy photo more closely. Yeah, neither could I. I'm still trying to figure that one out. And the round symbol which goes through some of the lettering. Nonetheless, their language does offer clues. From what I've gathered, they have their own language that is unique from any other known language in the world. But they do have a lot of loan words. By that, I don't mean Spanish, French, or English. I mean ancient Dravidian or Sumerian. Do you remember the name of the moon god or the Sumer people? I thought for a few moments before replying. Is it Nanner, maybe? Well, yes, among many other names. Their word for moon is Nana, which can be a coincidence. But that is not the only word for moon they've got. They have multiple names for the moon. They worship it actually, so it makes sense. But those other names, which are used for different cycles, are Nana Suan, Dumbar, and Suan, among others. They have a stark similarity to the different names for the moon god in the ancient Sumer tongue. Nana Suan, Nanar, Dombabar, and Sin. Another similar word is the word for fire, Nuska, or Nuska, identical to the name of the Sumero-Akkadian god of light and fire. And the very fact that they are aware of the moon cycle is interesting. That slab as well, I want to carbon date it, but I can't go back. I need more time. What do you mean you can't go back? I asked. Well, obviously I left for a reason. I was homesick and the natives were getting a bit annoyed at my prodding. And I don't want to get in trouble with the Indian government. I need more time to think this through, need more evidence. Look, though this is all interesting, I think it's raking a toll on you. You should rest for a while from it, lest it burn you out. We can change the topic if you want as well, I said, worried slightly. No, I can stop. Crap, look at the time. Listen, I have to get going. I sincerely apologize for having to leave at such short notice, but I'll make it up to you. We can continue tomorrow if you would like, he said, suddenly standing up and grabbing the photos from the table. Oh yeah, well, sure. Absolutely, my door is always open to you for a visit. Unless it's a weekday, then I'm probably at work. But you get the point, I said, not really knowing what else to say at that point. And Pierre slowly made his way to the door. Thank you very much, and the tea was wonderful, by the way. I'm glad one American has a good taste in tea at the very least. Nothing. I'll see you soon, bye. That was the last time that I saw or heard from him in the past year. I wouldn't pay much mind, but he changed his phone number the day after. He has no social media whatsoever, so I can't find him there either. It all just seems weird to me. That island, Pierre himself. I don't know him so well, I have to admit, I never have. But I am absolutely positive he found something big. I know he did. He didn't scam me or anything. He didn't indicate anything that would lead me to believe he was lying. Heck, he told me to keep my mouth shut about this. But that photo of the slab with the text and greenery all around it, though I can see it's weathered the test of time, I can still see there was fine craftsmanship in it. But the text, now that I think about it, it looked more like a drawing with wavy lines similar to Arabic in a way. Also, wavy lines on stone. That is incredibly hard to make by hand, even by machine. But those lines, symbols, whatever they are, they resemble waves and the large round symbol going through them, to the surface.